The call that changed everything. The cigarette smoke hung thick in the air of the private room, curling around the faces of 12 dangerous men who sat at a long mahogany table. At the head sat Marcus Castellano, a man whose name alone could silence a crowded room. His eyes were cold, calculating, and empty in a way that made even his closest men uncomfortable. He was discussing a deal worth $40 million. A deal that would make him the most powerful man on the eastern seaboard. Every word he spoke was law. Every decision he made was final. No one interrupted Marcus Castellano. Ever. His phone vibrated against the table. He glanced at the screen and felt something shift in his chest. A feeling he hadn't experienced in 7 years. Elena. The name glowed on the screen like a ghost from another lifetime. Elena Vasquez. The woman who had walked out of his life without a word, without a trace, without giving him a chance to explain who he really was. He declined the call. As I was saying, Marcus continued, his voice steady, the shipment arrives Thursday. The phone rang again. The men exchanged glances. Marcus's jaw tightened. He declined it once more. Silence returned to the room. But not for long. The phone rang a third time. This time, Marcus felt something cold crawl down his spine. Elena had never called him. Not once in 7 years. Not when he'd searched for her. Not when he'd sent men to find her. She had vanished like smoke, and he had eventually accepted that she was gone forever. Something was wrong. He picked up the phone and answered, bringing it slowly to his ear. Elena! But it wasn't Elena's voice that came through the speaker. It was smaller, fragile, trembling with fear. Dad? Come fast. Mama is in danger. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the edge of the table as the word echoed in his mind. Dad, who is this? His voice came out rough, broken. Please. The small voice whispered, and he could hear tears in it. Please come. The bad men are here. Mama told me to hide and call this number. She said you would come. Marcus was already standing. His chair scraped against the floor as he moved toward the door. Boss? One of his men called out. The meeting. Cancel it. But sir, the Russians are waiting for. Marcus turned, and the look in his eyes silenced the room completely. It was not anger. It was not authority. It was something far more terrifying. It was fear. Raw, human fear in the eyes of a man who had forgotten how to feel anything at all. I said cancel it. He was gone before anyone could respond. The man he used to be. As Marcus drove through the rain-soaked streets, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, memories flooded back like water breaking through a dam. He hadn't always been this monster. 20 years ago, Marcus Castellano was just a boy from the Bronx with a sick mother and no father to speak of. He worked 2 jobs by the time he was 16, washing dishes and loading trucks, just to pay for her medication. But the medical bills kept growing. The debt collectors kept coming. And his mother kept getting worse. When she died in a hospital hallway because they couldn't afford a private room, something inside Marcus broke. He was 17 when he joined the Castellano family, not by blood, but by necessity. Old man Castellano saw potential in the angry young man who had nothing left to lose. He taught Marcus everything. How to negotiate, how to intimidate, how to survive in a world where kindness was weakness and mercy was death. By 25, Marcus had taken over the family. By 30, he controlled half the city's underground operations. By 35, he was untouchable. But power came with a price. He had forgotten how to love, how to trust, how to feel anything beyond the cold satisfaction of winning. Then Elena happened. She was a waitress at a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, the kind of place Marcus would never normally visit. But one rainy night, his car broke down, and he stepped inside just to get out of the storm. Elena had smiled at him, not because she knew who he was, not because she wanted something from him. She smiled because he looked cold and tired, and she brought him hot coffee without him asking. "You look like you could use this," she had said, her brown eyes warm and kind. Marcus had fallen in love with her that night. Not with her beauty, though she was beautiful, but with her goodness, her simplicity, the way she laughed at his jokes and talked about her dreams of becoming a teacher one day. For 8 months, Marcus lived a double life. With Elena, he was just Mark, a businessman who worked long hours and sometimes had to cancel dates at the last minute. She never questioned him. She trusted him completely, and that trust destroyed them. One night, Elena saw something she shouldn't have. Marcus was meeting with his men in a parking garage, and she had come to surprise him with dinner. She saw the guns. She heard the threats. She watched the man she loved break another man's fingers for failing to pay a debt. She ran. By the time Marcus got to her apartment, she was already gone. No note, no explanation, just silence. He searched for her for 2 years. He used every resource, every contact, every favor he had. But Elena had disappeared completely, as if she had never existed at all. Eventually, Marcus stopped searching. He buried the memory of her alongside whatever remained of his humanity. Until tonight, until a child's voice called him Dad. The daughter he never knew. The address the child had given him led to a small apartment building in Queens, the kind of place where people kept to themselves and didn't ask questions. Marcus arrived in under 20 minutes, breaking every traffic law in the city. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. When he reached apartment 4B, the door was slightly open. Marcus pushed it gently, stepping inside. The apartment was small but clean, filled with the kind of warmth that comes from love rather than money. There were drawings on the refrigerator, books stacked on a small shelf, a worn couch with a handmade blanket draped over it. And in the corner, hidden behind the couch, he saw a small figure. A girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark curly hair and eyes that were unmistakably his own. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Are you my dad?" Marcus couldn't speak. He knelt down slowly, his massive frame somehow making itself small, unthreatening. "Yes," he finally managed. "Yes, I am. What's your name?" "Mia." Mia. The name hit him like a punch to the chest. He had a daughter named Mia. "Where's your mama, Mia?" The girl pointed toward a closed door. "The men took her in there. They were yelling. Mama told me to hide and call the number she gave me. She said if I was ever really, really scared, I should call that number." Marcus stood slowly, his entire body coiled with tension. "Stay here. Don't move. I'll get your mama." He walked toward the closed door, his footsteps silent despite his size. Years of training had taught him how to move like a shadow. He pressed his ear against the wood and heard voices inside. 2 men, maybe 3. And then he heard Elena's voice. Weak, scared, but still defiant. "I told you I don't have it. I don't have any money. Please, just leave us alone. Your boyfriend owes us $50,000. Since he ran, that debt falls on you. That's how this works, sweetheart." Marcus felt rage build inside him, cold, controlled, deadly. These men had nothing to do with him. This was about some other man, some other mistake. But they had threatened the mother of his child. They had made his daughter cry. They would answer for that. He opened the door slowly, stepping into the small bedroom like a storm rolling in from the sea. Two men stood over Elena, who was sitting on the bed with a bruise forming on her cheek. They turned when they heard the door open, their expressions shifting from annoyance to confusion to recognition. Castellano? One of them breathed. Marcus didn't waste words. He stepped forward, grabbed the first man by the throat, and slammed him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. The second man reached for his gun, but Marcus was faster. He caught the man's wrist, twisted it until the weapon fell, and drove his elbow into the man's face. Both men were on the ground within seconds, groaning in pain. Marcus stood over them, his voice quiet and terrible. "You have exactly 10 seconds to tell me who sent you, and then you have exactly 1 hour to leave the city and never come back. If I ever see your faces again, if I ever hear that you've come within 100 miles of this building, I will find you, and I will make you beg for death. Am I understood?" They understood. They gave him a name, Tony Marchetti, a small-time loan shark who had no idea who he had just crossed. Then they ran, stumbling over each other in their desperation to escape. Marcus turned to Elena. She sat on the bed, staring at him with wide eyes. She looked older now. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, and her hair was shorter. But she was still the same woman who had brought him coffee on a rainy night 7 years ago. "Mark," she whispered. "Elena." The silence between them was heavy with years of pain, fear, and unanswered questions. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You kept her from me. You kept my daughter from me." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I had to. I was trying to protect her." "From what?" "From you." Her voice broke. "From your world. From the violence. I saw what you really were that night, Mark. I saw the monster, and I couldn't let my child grow up in that darkness." Marcus felt the words cut deeper than any blade ever could, because she wasn't wrong. Everything she said was true. He was a monster. He had built an empire on fear and blood. He had done things that would haunt him forever. But he was also a father, and that changed everything. "I would never have hurt her," he said quietly. "Or you. I know that now." Elena wiped her tears. "I've always known that. But I was scared, Mark. I was young and scared, and I ran. And then it was too late to come back. I had built a life here, a quiet life, away from everything. And the man who owes money to Marchetti? Who is he?" Elena looked away, shame coloring her cheeks. "David. I met him 2 years ago. I thought he was good. He said he wanted to take care of us. But he was a liar, a gambler. He took everything I had and then ran when the debt collectors came. I was too proud to call you. I thought I could handle it alone." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing down the anger. Now was not the time. "Mia," he said, "tell me about her." Elena's face softened, and for the first time, she smiled. A small, tired, beautiful smile. "She's wonderful. She's smart and kind and brave. She loves to draw. She asks a lot of questions. And she—" Elena paused, fresh tears falling. "She has your eyes, your stubbornness, your way of not giving up." Marcus felt something crack open inside him, something he had kept locked away for decades. "I want to know her," he said. "I want to be her father, whatever that means, however that looks." "And your world? Your business? The violence?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was different, softer, more human than it had been in years. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. But for her, for you, I would try. I would try to be better. The choice. The next few weeks were strange and difficult and more painful than Marcus had expected. He didn't know how to be a father. He didn't know how to talk to a 6-year-old girl who loved butterflies and hated broccoli and asked him questions like, "Why is the sky blue?" And "Do you have any friends?" But he learned. He learned to sit on the floor and color with crayons. He learned the names of her stuffed animals. He learned that she was scared of thunder and loved chocolate milk and always wanted 3 bedtime stories instead of 2. He learned that being a father wasn't about power or control. It was about presence, about showing up, about being patient even when he didn't know what he was doing. Mia accepted him with the openness that only children possess. She didn't ask about his past. She didn't care about his empire. She just wanted him to be there, to watch her draw, to hear about her day at school, to tuck her in at night. "Dad?" she asked one evening, her small hand wrapped around his finger. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to stay this time?" Marcus looked into her eyes, and felt his heart break and heal at the same time. "Yes," he said. "I'm going to stay." But staying came with a price. His men were growing restless. His business was suffering. Rivals were circling, sensing weakness. The word on the street was that Marcus Castellano had gone soft, that he spent his days playing with a child instead of running his empire. One night, his second-in-command, Victor, came to him with a warning. "Boss, you need to make a choice. Either you come back fully, or you walk away completely. You can't live in both worlds. The Antonellis are making moves. They think you're finished. If you don't respond, they'll take everything." Marcus sat in silence, staring at the window where he could see the city lights stretching to the horizon. He had built this empire with blood and sacrifice. It was everything he had worked for, but it was also everything that had cost him Elena. Everything that had kept him from his daughter for 6 years. "What would you do?" he asked Victor. "If you had to choose between this life and something real?" Victor shook his head. "I don't have something real. That's why I'm still here." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then maybe you're the right person to take over." Victor stared at him. "Boss." "I'm done, Victor. I'm walking away." The words felt foreign in his mouth. Walking away from power, from control, from everything he had known. But when he thought of Mia's smile, when he thought of Elena's face when she watched them together, he knew it was the only choice that mattered. Redemption. Leaving was not simple. Marcus spent months unwinding his empire, piece by piece. He transferred control to Victor. He settled old debts. He made peace with enemies where he could and disappeared from enemies he couldn't. He used his money, earned through years of darkness, to build something new. A foundation for children in foster care. A scholarship fund for kids from the Bronx. A quiet life far from the city, in a small house by the sea. Elena and Mia came with him. It wasn't a fairy tale. Elena and Marcus didn't fall back in love overnight. There were arguments. There were days when the past came flooding back, and old wounds reopened. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly, carefully, painfully. But they tried. And slowly, day by day, week by week, they became something like a family. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Marcus sat on the porch with Mia on his lap. She was drawing a picture of their house, complete with stick figures of all 3 of them. "Dad?" she said. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you came when I called." Marcus pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Me too," he whispered. "Me too." Elena stepped out onto the porch, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Marcus and sat down beside him, her shoulder brushing against his. "She fell asleep during story time last night," Elena said. She was waiting for you to come home. I'll be here earlier tomorrow, Marcus promised. Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in 7 years, she didn't see the monster. She saw the man she had once loved. The man who was fighting every day to become someone worthy of their daughter. I know you will, she said softly. Marcus reached out and took her hand. She let him. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the distance, waves crashed against the shore, endless, rhythmic, eternal. And in that small house by the sea, a man who had spent his entire life building an empire of fear finally found something he never thought he deserved. Family, a second chance, a home, the call that saved him. Years later, when Mia was grown and had children of her own, she would sometimes tell them the story of how their grandfather came into her life. I was so scared, she would say. The bad men were there, and Mama told me to hide. She gave me a phone number and said, if you're ever really, really scared, call this number. He will come. And did he come? Her children would ask. Yes. Mia would smile, her eyes, her father's eyes, shining with tears. He came, and he never left. Marcus would sit quietly in the corner, listening. His hair was gray now, and his hands were weathered. But his eyes still held that same intensity, tempered now by decades of love, sacrifice, and quiet redemption. Elena would catch his gaze across the room, and they would share a look that needed no words. A look that said, we made it. Against all odds. We made it. And sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, Marcus would stand by the window and look up at the stars. He would think about the man he used to be, the monster who lived in darkness, who built empires on fear, who had forgotten how to feel anything at all. And then he would think about that phone call, that small, trembling voice that whispered, Dad, come fast. Mama is in danger. That call hadn't just saved Elena. It had saved him, and that, Marcus knew, was the greatest miracle of all. Some men are saved by power, some by wealth, some by victory. But the truly lucky ones, the ones who find redemption in the end, are saved by love, by a child's voice in the darkness, by a second chance they never deserved, by the simple, terrifying act of answering the phone when the past comes calling.